There's something about towns without a name on the map that makes you feel like you're trespassing just by breathing. I was doing a freelance piece on isolationist groups in rural Kentucky, off-the-grid communities, survivalist clans, that kind of thing. Honestly, it sounded more dramatic than it was. Most of them just wanted to be left alone, and I respected that. I wasn't there to exploit anyone. I just wanted to understand why. That's how I ended up in a little pocket of Appalachia so far off the main highway. My GPS stopped giving directions and just showed me a blue dot in a sea of green. No town name, no welcome sign, just a general store, a diner, and a one-floor motel with a Coke machine from the 80s humming out front. I checked in for 2 nights, told the woman behind the counter I was a journalist doing a story on rural living. She smiled real polite, handed me the key, and said something about how things out here were quiet and best kept that way. I figured that was just the local way of saying, "Don't snoop." The town itself was friendly enough. Older folks sitting outside the diner, kids riding bikes down the gravel shoulder of the road, a group of guys fixing a rusted pickup in front of a garage that probably hadn't passed an inspection in 30 years. But every time I brought up the large fenced-in property just outside town, real thick wire fence, topped with barbed coil, one road leading up into the woods, people got weird. Some would change the subject. Others would claim not to know what I meant. Even the friendliest guy I met, the one who offered to show me the old coal bridge, just kind of laughed it off and said I ought to stay on the roads I came in on. The way their eyes would shift, though, that was what stuck with me. Like they were afraid saying something might do something. I figured I'd drive out to the fence myself the next morning, just to take a look. I wasn't planning on trespassing, just some photos, a note or two, maybe a description for the article. But that night, around 11:30, just as I was brushing my teeth in that dim yellow bathroom light, I heard it, a soft shuffle, paper against floor. I stepped into the main room and saw it, a folded note halfway under my door. I stared at it longer than I should have before picking it up. No envelope, just one sentence, handwritten in tight, slanted letters. "Don't ask questions unless you want to be next." No signature. No name, just that. My whole body went cold. I checked the door, still locked. Peephole was dark. No footsteps outside. I even peeked through the thin motel curtains. Nothing but the empty lot and that flickering street lamp out front. I didn't sleep much. Every creak in the walls felt loaded. I kept thinking, next what? Missing person? Dead animal? Some kind of warning? When the sun finally came up, I told myself maybe it was just a scare tactic, a bluff. Maybe someone saw my license plate and figured they didn't want an outsider poking around. I packed up, deciding to cut the trip short. Forget the fence. Forget the story. This place didn't want me here. But when I got outside, I found my car sitting low on all 4 tires. Slashed. Clean cuts. Deep. Somebody had taken their time. I was still standing there in shock when the sheriff's cruiser pulled up behind me, dust still settling around his tires. He stepped out slow, looked at the tires, looked at me, didn't ask what happened, didn't even look surprised. He just said something like, "Best you head out before dark. This town's quiet for a reason." I told him I wasn't trying to cause trouble, just working on a story. Asked if I could at least get a tow. He said sure, but made it clear no investigation, no questions. Just a tow to the next town over. After that, I was on my own. By the time I left, riding shotgun in the tow truck with my car bouncing behind us, I kept thinking about how everyone acted like they were scared of something, but not scared for me. Scared of me bringing it down on them. I never found out what was behind that fence. Never wrote the story either. Some stuff doesn't want to be uncovered, and this place made sure I got the message loud and clear. But every now and then, late at night, I think about that note. I wonder who left it, and I wonder what would have happened if I didn't listen. There's a stretch of the Appalachian Trail in North Carolina that doesn't show up on most day hiker maps. It's not a secret or anything, just remote. More miles than most folks are willing to walk, with steep climbs and long silences. That's what I wanted, space to think. No service, no emails, just my boots, my pack, and trees older than anything in my city life. I was 2 weeks into a solo section hike, mid-October, right when the leaves were peaking. The air was cool enough to keep the sweat from sticking and warm enough to sleep without shivering. My plan was to hit the shelter just past the Smokies, where I'd heard you could see the sunset through a break in the ridge. But that's not where I ended up. It started when I noticed the blazes, the paint marks on the trees that keep you on trail. Normally, they're white. Every few trees, one clean white line. Simple, easy to follow, even when your brain's half running on granola bars and filtered stream water. But these ones were red. The first time I noticed, I just figured it was a local reroute. Sometimes sections get washed out or there's trail maintenance, and they redirect foot traffic. It's not common, but it happens. I even remember saying something out loud to myself like, "Guess they're changing things up." I followed the red without thinking twice. After about a mile, the trail got weird, narrower, less walked. The leaves weren't crushed underfoot like they usually are from dozens of boots a day. I figured maybe this detour wasn't that new, or maybe it was just a low-traffic section. Then I started seeing bones. At first, it was just a rib cage, half sunk in mud. Looked like deer. Then a little further, a scatter of smaller bones, raccoon maybe, or fox. Not unusual for the woods, but the pattern made my gut clench. They weren't scattered like from a coyote or rot. They were placed, neat piles, arranged in weird little spirals or stacks of vertebrae balanced on stones, like someone had taken time to make them look a certain way. I stood there for a minute, just looking at one of the stacks. Everything was quiet, like too quiet. No birds, no wind. Even the trees felt like they were leaning in. I thought about turning back right then, and I should have, but I convinced myself it was just art. Some creepy forest artist leaving installations to mess with hikers. That's a thing, right? Forest weirdos? So I kept walking. Another 20 minutes and I saw it. A shack. Primitive, sagging, more like a big lean-to with slabs of bark and old tarps nailed together. Smoke curling from something behind it, though I didn't hear a fire. And then I saw him. Half-shadowed behind a tree, maybe 30 yards off. Barely visible, but there. Watching. Not moving. Just watching. He didn't wave. Didn't call out. Didn't do anything but stand still with his arms at his sides like he'd been waiting. I didn't even think. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I turned around and ran. Back up the trail, except it didn't feel like a trail anymore. The red blazes were gone. No white ones either. Just woods. The same woods I thought I knew like the back of my hand. Every tree looked the same. Every bend felt wrong. I ran until my lungs burned, until my knees buckled, and I just kept going. I didn't stop until I saw a white blaze again. Clean and crisp on the side of a beech tree like a glowing road sign in the dark. I didn't pitch my tent that night. I just walked until I found a shelter with other hikers and sat there shaking with my pack still on. The next day, I told a ranger. He didn't laugh, but he didn't exactly look shocked either. Said sometimes people mess with the blazes. That red paint isn't regulation. Could have been anything, vandals, a bad joke, an off-grid squatter. But I saw those bones. I saw that shack, and I saw him. A few days later, I looked at my GPS map just for fun. That red-marked trail? It doesn't exist. Not on any hiker's map, not on Gaia, not on the Forest Service overlays. Whoever painted those red blazes didn't want to help anyone. They wanted to lead someone off the map, and they nearly did. Now when I hike, I don't follow anything but white, even if red looks fresh, even if it looks official, because not every trail is made to be found. If you're drawn to tales like these, consider subscribing to Spectral for more chilling entries waiting to be uncovered. And if you have your own haunting story that you'd like featured in an upcoming compilation, we'd love to hear it. Just email us at spectralentries@gmail.com. Now, let's get back to the video. You ever inherit something that feels more like a warning than a gift? My wife, Lacey, and I were living in a one-bedroom apartment above a pizza shop when we found out her great-uncle, someone she barely remembered meeting once at a family reunion, had left her a house. Full deed, no mortgage, just signed over clean. It was a cabin, technically, tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains, a few miles off the Virginia border. Closest town was maybe 30 minutes away, and that was if you didn't get stuck behind a tractor on the switchbacks. First, it felt like a dream, a fresh start. We packed up everything we owned into a U-Haul, drove through winding mountain roads lined with gold leaf trees, and rolled up to this quiet little wooden house nestled against the woods like it had been waiting for us. A porch swing, a fireplace. You could smell the pine through the walls. But here's the thing. The quiet out there isn't peaceful. It's dense. You can feel it press in at night like the silence is watching. On our second day, a neighbor stopped by. Older man, gray beard, beat-up truck. Said he lived about a mile east through the woods. Brought over some eggs and honey, which was nice. But then he looked at both of us with this heavy kind of stare and said, "You two keep the doors locked. Don't go walking after dusk. Some up here don't like newcomers." He didn't smile when he said it, just tipped his cap, got in his truck, and drove off. We laughed about it later, like city people do when locals try to spook them. Told ourselves it was probably a bear warning, or maybe just small-town superstition, but we started locking the doors anyway. The first pile of rocks showed up a week in, just a little stack. 5 smooth stones balanced neatly on top of one another, sitting dead center on the welcome mat. I figured it was some kid from deeper in the woods, maybe a harmless joke. I kicked it over and forgot about it. But the next morning, there were 3 piles. One on the mat, one on the porch railing, one tucked in the corner by the firewood rack. Lacey thought it was weird. I told her maybe it was just some local hiker thing. Maybe we were near a trail. But every night they'd disappear, and every morning they'd be back, moved, reshaped, more of them. They weren't just on the porch anymore. They showed up in the garden beds, the windowsills, on the steps, always neat, always intentional, never the same. We set up a trail cam on the porch, one of those motion-activated kinds. Next day, it was dead. Batteries completely drained, even though we just swapped them. Not even a single frame recorded. That's when it stopped being funny. We tried staying up. Lights off, just peeking through the blinds. Nothing moved. The woods didn't even twitch. But in the morning, more stacks.
Taller.
Closer. One pile was placed right outside the bedroom window. We didn't sleep much after that. We tried asking around in town, but people got cagey. One woman told us flat out not to mess with the rocks. Another said her cousin had moved out of the mountains after something similar. No one gave details, just that same edge in their voice, like they knew and didn't want to say. Then came the night we couldn't explain. We went to bed, every door locked, every window latched. We even pushed a chair under the front door handle like in the movies. At some point in the night, Lacey shook me awake. She was whispering my name, eyes wide, face pale. I remember her voice. She kept saying she heard something downstairs. Not footsteps exactly, more like soft scraping, like something being placed gently on wood. I grabbed the flashlight and the bat we kept by the dresser and crept down. The door was still locked, windows too, but the living room, dozens. Dozens of stone stacks. On the coffee table, on the back of the couch, on the floor, the windowsills, the mantel. Perfect little towers, some barely an inch tall, some knee-high. Not a single one had fallen over. We left that night, didn't even wait for sunrise, packed whatever we could into the car and drove until we saw streetlights again. I don't know who or what was building those stacks. I don't know how they got inside. The sheriff said there was no sign of forced entry, no footprints, no pry marks, just the rocks. The place is still there, far as I know. We never went back. We gave the keys to a lawyer and told them to do whatever they wanted with it. Sell it, burn it, we didn't care. And that neighbor, the one who told us to lock the doors, he was right. Some up there don't like newcomers, and they really don't like when you ignore their warnings.